Hey up! The Royal Enfield Interceptor 700 was originally introduced in 1960. It was an export model derived from the Constellation. It was intended as an off-road or Scrambler model for the US and Canadian market. In fact, the base model didn't even come with the necessary equipment to make it road legal in those countries. It was intended for recreation and competition only. And it was only after disappointing sales in the first season that they dropped the basic model and just continued with what they regarded as the sports model, which was basically the same bike, but it had what they called the highways pack, which allowed the bike to be ridden legally on the roads. It became a popular and respected machine, and there's little wonder, because not only was it a fantastic scrambler, which was Royal Enfield's original plan, it was also a fantastic road bike. The Interceptor continued in production for another 10 years until 1970, also gaining another 50 cc's along the way. Although this was originally intended to be a competition off-road bike, Royal Enfield had unwittingly created what has to be one of the original dual-purpose machines. A bike that was just as happy on or off-road. And if it hadn't been for the competition from Japan, it may well have continued longer. However, Redditch went into liquidation in 1970, closing its doors for the final time, which was the death knell for the Interceptor. Fast forward some 45 years, and in early 2019, Royal Enfield India reintroduced the Interceptor 650 Twin, but it was a road-only machine, which in a lot of ways was a bit of a shame because it was just screaming out to be turned into a scrambler. Now, at the NEC 2019 Motorcycle Live, speaking to one of the members of staff at Royal Enfield, he hinted to me that there was a Scrambler version in development, or at least there were plans to develop one. Since then, each year, Royal Enfield's introduced some new models, but this eagerly awaited 650 Scrambler wasn't one of them. Back in 2022, some spy shots were taken of what looked like a Scrambler version of the Interceptor 650. It was expected to be launched early this year, but instead, Royal Enfield launched the Super Meteor 650. And then, this August, not in India as you would expect, but somewhere in Europe, this was spotted. Now, the circumstances of this impromptu photo shoot lead me to believe that it was actually staged. I haven't actually counted them, but I think there are about 12 photographs of one flyby, optimally positioned on a bend, which suggests to me that the cameraman was ready and waiting with his camera in burst mode, because he knew the arrival of the bike was imminent. And what we have here is what is clearly a Royal Enfield Interceptor-based motorcycle, all decked out as a scrambler. Up front we have a single round headlamp with two round indicators and a single instrument binnacle which presumably houses the speedometer. The bike's running on a set of dual sport tyres, and just like the Super Meteor, it's now been equipped with a pair of upside down forks. The front mudguard appears to have been redesigned with just a little bit more clearance between the tyre and the underside of the fender itself, and it incorporates protectors for the lower parts of the upside down forks, which is what you would expect. This is a dual purpose bike, it's not intended to be used exclusively off-road. The bike photographed appears to have a 2-in-1 Scrambler type exhaust, and the side panels have been reworked to incorporate the sort of competition number plate. The engine has been completely blacked out, and it's sitting on a pair of sort of traditional straight-up rear shocks, which appear to have been extended slightly for travel. The rear mudguard is a complete departure from the standard Interceptor item, offering a lot more clearance to the rear wheel, definitely having more of an off-road oriented look to it. Royal Enfield have ditched the stock rear Interceptor light cluster, again boasting round indicators, but this time a round tail light and combined brake light, which appears to be LED. This is clearly a late stage prototype. It's impossible to tell whether any changes have been made to other aspects of the bike like the tank or the seat, although the seat does seem to be a flat bench style seat. And looking at the various connections rigged up to the telemetry box, it would appear that the bike is obviously in a different state of tune to the standard Interceptor. Some sources have mooted that this bike may be called the Bear due to Royal Enfield trademarking that name earlier this year. I know Royal Enfield did have some trademark issues with the Interceptor name in some territories where it's known as the Int. Somehow, to me, calling a motorcycle the Bear doesn't feel right, but it's not up to me. I personally would prefer the Interceptor Scrambler or the Int Scrambler. I think customers would find that more familiar and less divisive. Having said that, I thought that the Hunter was a weird name for a motorcycle, but I sort of got used to it in the end. A Scrambler version of the Interceptor has been much anticipated right since the original Interceptor was launched, and knowing motorcyclists as I do, I think that such a bike could easily be more popular than the Super Meteor and the Continental GT. It may even knock the standard Interceptor off the top spot. At 47-48 brake horsepower, this oil air-cooled twin is the perfect power plant for a Scrambler in my humble opinion. It's smooth, it's torquey, it's powerful without being too powerful, and it's got shed loads of engine braking, which is exactly what you need for off-road use. It's also an engine with an impeccable reputation for strength and reliability. Now, these spy shots were taken in August, and it seems unusual that they were taken in Europe. That suggests to me that the bike was going through its final shakedown, and that the actual model release is imminent. We've got the EICMA coming up in just a few weeks, followed by the NEC Motorcycle Live Show. So I wouldn't be surprised if this bike was launched in November, with them possibly hitting the showroom floors around Europe in January of next year. Now, judging by the way that Royal Enfield have behaved in the last year or so, I think what we're probably going to see is a slight upgrade, a more premium look to this bike than we see with the standard Interceptor. The all-black versions, as we know, had upgraded switchgear and a few tweaks that just lifted it up as a more premium machine, and I think that's probably what we're going to be looking at with the Scrambler or Bear or whatever it is they're going to call it. The exhaust design, if it stays the same as we've seen in these pictures, does lend itself much better to some practical luggage, and I can see this bike being a sort of modern classic adventure tourer. The Harris Performance Design chassis being perfect for long distance touring as well as commuting and whatever else you want to do with the bike, with the additional Scrambler modifications providing the bike with more versatility if you want to go off the beaten track. All we can do now is just sit back and see what the next couple of months bring. Once again, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support this channel. I really appreciate it. I'd also appreciate it if you would leave a like and perhaps subscribe to this channel if you're not already a subscriber. It does stimulate the algorithm and helps improve the reach of this, my other videos, and of course it helps to grow this channel. If you would like to help support this channel in other ways, there's always my Patreon page or the super thanks button down below. I am of course going to be back next week, so until then, if you're riding, please ride safely, and I'll see you soon.